All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, we are back at it again for a brand new week. Fun. Let's get some announcements out of the way. Tonight, 8 p.m., it's my Dad Talk Roundtable. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, I'm Liberty Dad, obviously. And so what I like to do on Fridays, I try and reach out and find dads to bring on the show solo, like not solo, but one-on-one. Bring them on the show, have a chat with them about what's important to them. And I will reserve time at 7:30 in the morning to do that for the dads that have that opportunity, and then 6:30 in the PM, 6:30 p.m. for dads that maybe have to go to work or dropping the kids off or what have you. However, I thought it would be great to once a month have several guys that I trust on the show, and we would just talk about a particular topic, some topic that's, that I've seen, or maybe that's, hot right now or whatever, that's related to being either a man, a husband, or a father. And so tonight I'll have my round table, and I believe all the same guys are going to be there since from last month. I started it last month, but we'll see. I know one guy was talking about he might be sick, so we'll see. So it may be my friend Jacob, and then my other friend Tyler, and then we might have Adam. I almost called him Mike. I don't even know, but we may have Adam Coleman. So all three of these guys are my current Dad Talk Roundtable guys, and I believe all of them will be there tonight. But Adam was feeling under the weather this weekend, so we'll see. He may or may not be able to make it tonight. What we're going to talk about? I saw a video that I thought was interesting, and it basically is about how I met my wife and dating tips. And the reason, like, the video kind of stirred in me, but I've also seen a lot of conversation all over social media about dating. And I'm just like, what? This is bad. There's a lot of bad advice out there. So since we are married men, we're going to give you the scoop on how we met our wives, some of the things that we did. Perhaps we'll have some goofy stories about, hey, I tried to do this. And, we'll have if you've ever seen the movie Hitch, we'll have our Hitch stories perhaps. So look forward to that tonight. That's 8 p.m. tonight. So same channel. All right. So we got that out of the way. All right. Next up for announcements, Thursday and Friday. I haven't decided just yet, but I may or may not have a show. I don't know. Here's why. I will be at PodFest in Orlando. Yeah, there's like a whole podcast festival, if you will. It's a conference. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I will be there in Orlando. And, I haven't decided because that just means more equipment that I have to take. And that means I have to adjust all my settings and everything. And, I don't really have a camera that I can take remotely. That's easy. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm looking at the logistics of it, and it's really not difficult. I'm driving down there, so it's not like it's going to be super difficult. I don't have to try to worry about airlines and all that stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. Do I feel like carrying all this stuff, setting it all up? I don't know. And it seems weird. I get it. I know. I know. Somebody's out there like, wait a minute. So you're going to go to a podcast conference and then not even podcast. So I hear you. I hear you. But we'll see. So I may just take, I just may take Thursday and Friday to focus on the convention and see what I can learn, so that when I come back, I can yet again bring you a good show. All right. Let's see here. Oh, this is great news. My VA lady says I may have a dad lined up for Friday Dad Talk episode. That'd be awesome. I'll get with you. It won't be this Friday, but next Friday is open for sure. So we'll talk about that. All right. So we're talking again about the ICE agent shooting up in Missouri. And the reason is because on Friday, I presented my case for why I believe Renee Good, why her actions did not rise to the level that warranted being shot to death. I also argued that Agent Ross, as he's since been identified, was in the wrong. And then more video has come out, and the debate has continued to rage. Like, pretty much, if you go to if you go to X, you will see that pretty much all of my conversations have dealt with this particular topic. So I've been super hyper focused on this. I've been watching videos. I was actually, here's what I actually did. I had a hunch, and I was like, I think when you're watching the different videos, you see Renee pulling forward, then backing up, and then going again. I was like, I think the turning radius of her vehicle is such that she couldn't have possibly moved her vehicle directly in front of Agent Ross. In other words, I was disputing this idea that she intentionally aimed it at him so that she could hit him. And so I was initially going to use our own SUV, but the wife put a squash on that. She's like, yeah, I don't really want my vehicle to be in your video for this. Which is fair. It's fair. But then I did more research, and I found out it wouldn't have been a good video anyway, because when I compare the dimensions of the vehicle that we have to the dimensions of her vehicle, a Honda Pilot, AI was like, yeah, basically the dimensions are too far different, and it would just really it would significantly alter the what you're trying to do. And so I was like, all right, well, it looks like the wife was right. Wait a minute, hold on. I hope she's not listening. Okay, but anyway, so I was doing that over the weekend. But then I was like, all right, well, maybe I can do this in 3D, and so I can sketch it up. So I put it in like several hours worth of work, and then I scrapped it all, and I was like, you know what? Actually, I think I can do this much more easily. So here we are today. So all my time right now has been devoted to this particular topic. So this is going to be my final, final commentary on it, I think, because I think it's winding down, and I don't think that there's much, like, we've got video from multiple angles now, and I think with the multiple angles, we can make an assessment. So today, I want to take the opportunity to shift my view just slightly based on some new evidence, because we've got new video that's come out since my last show. My current and final position is going to be this: Renee Good was indeed interfering on the scene and attempted to flee, but the evidence does not demonstrate any intent to harm Agent Ross. Now, that's intent. Okay, that doesn't mean that it couldn't have happened. Those are distinct things. My second point is that Agent Ross negligently used his firearm, and evidence shows that while he could not have known Renee's intent, his situational awareness was faulty, and his poor response to that share in the tragic death of a U.S. citizen. In other words, he bears responsibility because he failed to maintain situational awareness, and that failure to maintain situational awareness then led to his response, which was shooting her. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is the legal case is complex. Agent Ross is a federal agent. People have cited that, I've seen people cite DHS policy guidelines, and even some people have referred to Missouri State Supreme Court cases, which have said that if somebody is pointing a vehicle at you, uh, their intent no longer matters. But it's unclear how all of this is likely to actually play out. And part of that's because he is a federal agent. So there is, first and foremost, supremacy. Federal outranks state. And then to what extent could or would any state level laws actually apply? And then you have qualified immunity. And I've noticed that some people seem to treat qualified immunity as absolute, kind of like, hey, he was doing his job, end of story. And while qualified immunity is rather strong, it is actually not absolute. There are cases of officers who have lost their claim to QI in the past. But here's my read. My read is that it's actually quite difficult for an officer to lose their qualified immunity. Okay. Because that is the purpose of it, is to offer them immunity. So it wouldn't make sense if you're like, all right, we're giving you qualified immunity. And then every time somebody says, but what about this? Then to say, oh, you're right, it doesn't count here. Like, it wouldn't make sense. So by its very nature, it's going to be difficult to tackle and for an officer to lose. But it's not impossible. So just know that it is not absolute. And for the record, the standard libertarian position is to oppose qualified immunity, because you should not have extra protections that are this strong, because it alters how you engage in a situation. And so we're not going to get into it today, but libertarians have their answers for what, like how would we ensure that officers doing their job earnestly are not necessarily being thrown in jail every time a citizen complains, right? Like, we have answers to that, but that's not for this particular show today. So given all of that, instead of a legal case, what I'd like to do is make my case which is what I normally do, but I want to kind of spell it out. I want to make my case in terms of the court of public opinion. So the court of public opinion and the court of law are vastly different. So, for example, standard and burden of proof. The law has explicit standards and thresholds, while the court of public opinion, is kind of a free-for-all. It's almost like he who has the most followers can quickly be the winner. On the other hand, consequences and severity, well, those vary where the law has tangible penalties and even protections. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion, well, they can inflict severe, lifelong reputational, financial, and social damage, right? So they can. So there are like think about it this. Remember Home Depot lady that I defended, and I defended her right to say foul things. I didn't defend what she said, but she was the one that came out after Donald Trump had been the attempted shooting or attempted assassination, and she came out and she said something like, "Too bad the assassin missed," on her Facebook page. And then people saw that. They got very angry. They hunted her down. A guy claiming to be a veteran shows up at her work. She's literally ringing people up. And he's like, oh, you think this is funny? I'm going to make you famous. He posts it. It does go viral. And then I think libs of TikTok picked it up. And then eventually the woman got fired. All of that was the court of public opinion. And you could argue, and I think it's a strong argument, that what happened to her was overkill. It would be like if the law said, "Oh, you stole a candy bar from the local grocery store. Not only are you going to jail, but in 3 weeks we're giving you the death penalty." Right? It's kind of like maybe they're not quite equivalent in that sense. But what I'm pointing out is that was the level of severity. It inflicted a severe damage to her because she lost her job. And then now, they put her out all over social media. And then now, anytime she goes to get a job, if somebody just Googles her name, well, they'll be like, oh, this is the woman that said something dumb on social media. Do I want to hire her? Because do I want a mob coming after me? Right. So it could make it very difficult for her to get a job. And so this is what I'm pointing out. So arguments can be made where justice seems better served by one than when the other fails. And likewise, arguments can be made where just injustice was served by both. So, because I'm a podcast bro and I'm not a lawyer, and because I think the legal questions cannot be easily answered by somebody who has not at least been to trial for some of these cases, because of all that, I'm going to kind of stay away from any legal aspect. It's one thing to do a bill review and say, hey, here's my interpretation of this bill. It's another thing to speak about topics as they're happening that kind of require some level of experience, because it's not as cut and dry. So I think I would like to stay away from that, just because I think it makes it easier. And I'd also like to focus on the court of public opinion, because that's, one, the space that I operate in, but it's also the space that most people are operating in as well. So the court of public opinion doesn't have enforced and clear standards for judgment. So it's critical for people like me to use my core philosophy to help outline good judgment. So that's what I do already, but I kind of wanted to spell it out and just let you know why I am kind of avoiding talking about any legal case, because I did look up some legal cases. But again, there was the questions of like, what happens if this goes to trial? What has happened in trials in the past? And I simply just didn't have the time to review them. And since I'm not a lawyer with experience, I figured, you know what? Let's just stay away from it altogether. A lot easier. So let's get to Renee. We'll start with her. I've seen a lot of people attack her character. And by the way, let me go back to where's my notes here? So my argument here that I'm going to show you, Renee Good was indeed interfering on the scene, and she attempted to flee. I think the attempted to flee part, I think that's pretty well accepted. But I believe also the evidence does not demonstrate any intent to harm Agent Ross. Okay. So I've seen a lot of people attack her character, called her like a lesbian, butch, white liberal woman, Marxist, Antifa, all kind of things. I've even seen people like say, hey, she's a bad mother. And actually, of all the personal attacks I've seen, that one actually is the only one that I think has any level of merit. I will argue that parents should generally be mindful of their actions because they have obligated themselves to raise children. But that is very subjective. Okay. I like to ride. And when people were like, when I had a kid, I remember a woman that I know, she was like, well, I guess you got to get rid of your motorcycle. And I was like, for why? And she was like, because it's dangerous. And I was like, and she's like, well, you're a dad now. And I was like, okay. And she was like, well, it's, you got to protect yourself. And I thought it was funny because I was like, well, shouldn't I always be safe when I'm riding, no matter what? Because like I had a wife, I had myself, right? And so there's varying levels. It's subjective. There's varying levels of when should somebody stop doing a particular thing. However, regardless of the subjective nature of it, she still has all of her rights. Even if law enforcement determines that she needs questioned, detained, or even arrested, she retains all of her rights. So let's just say, for sake of argument here, let's say that she was an agitator, like many said, which I agree with. But let's say she was an agitator and she was out there and she was getting in the face of ICE agents. And we're kind of going off what actually happened, just to kind of make a point. But let's say that she was interfering, and let's say maybe even ICE was trying to arrest somebody and she obstructed them and they were not able to arrest this particular person. Okay. She still has all of her rights. All the same rights. They got her, they got to read Miranda. They can't just, go kick in her doors. Like she has rights. Even if she is breaking the law. When you break the law, you still have your rights. That's why we have Miranda. That's why cases get kicked out when the police don't, when they search your belongings, your property without a warrant. If they arrest you without cause. There are all these reasons for which people do get set free because they have rights, even if they've broken the law. Now, whatever argument someone makes of Renee should work exactly the same as if it were Ashley Babbitt or anyone else. So I want you to take a look at this conversation that I had with somebody. And I think this will kind of highlight the problems with people and the way that they're portraying her. So this person is just kind of the lead up. So they said, where is the libertarian right? Surely masked. Excuse me here. Surely, oops, what did I just do? Let's give me a second here. Okay, I see what I did. I clicked a button, got me confused. All right, it says, where's the libertarian right? Surely masked agents of the government roving the streets and questionably shooting citizens is not really their thing. By the way, I've been right here arguing and opposing this shooting, okay? Now, let's be clear. That doesn't mean I support all the actions of the person. That just means I say, hey, government, you're doing it wrong. That's it. That's as far as it goes. Don't read into anything. So then Brett here, he says, libertarians are about personal responsibility, right? Ron Paul was always like, herder, blowback, and herder, you wouldn't smoke heroin if it was illegal tomorrow, would you, kid? And okay. I also wouldn't drop my kid off at school and then with my butch lesbian midlife cry for attention, start messing with what you libertarians call the state's monopoly on violence. Oh, okay. So apparently butch, lesbian, midlife, and cry for attention. These are important details when determining whether somebody should have been shot. Hello? What is wrong with people? This is crazy. So then I said, I also wouldn't, and I didn't quote his whole thing, and I said, not relevant. Neither is the fact that she was a lesbian, butch or hot, midlife, or even crying for attention. All of my analysis would apply even if you somehow found yourself in a similar situation, but do continue to demonstrate lack of objectivity. He then responds to me, and he says, yes, I color my language for engagement. Surely someone so astute as yourself can filter through that. Our officers carry guns so that they may shoot us if necessary. You know, I really don't like the cavalier way that people just say this, like, officers carry guns so they can shoot us. Okay. Have you heard of the Second Amendment? Because it was written explicitly for citizens to shoot their government if necessary. Now, I'm not saying it's necessary, so if you go out and you shoot an officer, that's on you. I am just telling you what the Second Amendment was written for. That was its purpose. It wasn't for deer hunting. Go find me, tangent real quick. Because a lot of people say this, they're like, oh, that's what the Second Amendment was so you could like hunt and eat. Oh, yeah? Then why is it that none of the framers mention that anywhere? How is it they seem to have forgotten to mention it, but several hundred years later, we've got it figured out? Anyway, Brett goes on to say, they do not carry them to defend the homeland from foreign adversaries. She shouldn't have made it a hobby sport to F with law enforcement. Okay, so hobby sport to F with law enforcement. That's, depending on what it is, not necessarily illegal. Like if I want to find, you know the storm chasers, the guys and gals that go out and they chase like tornadoes? Imagine if I wanted to be a police chaser and I was just going to go out and I would find police and then just videotape them from a slight distance and just make fun of them. Be like, woo, piggy, piggy, you got a donut, right? I mean, that's silly and stupid, but like, that's not illegal. You can do that, right? You can mess with them. You can irritate them. That's your legal right to do it. I don't recommend it. I think you should find something more productive to do, but you can. So like Brett here seems to be addressing everything but whether or not she should be shot. And the problem that I have with his argument is he's focusing on all these things, and he can call it, I'm just coloring my language, whatever. He's pointing out all of these things that have nothing to do with, hey, Was this a legitimate shooting or not? You don't get to shoot lesbians because they're annoying you, because they've decided to take up a hobby sport of messing with you. He says she should have found a coffee house and read a book. I mean, I agree that would have been a better decision for her to make. And so, yes, in the context of, is that more productive use of your time? I think so. But whether she chooses to go find a coffee house and read a book, or whether she chooses to go and videotape officers and be a pain in the neck, either way, that's not a license to shoot her. Oops, so then let's see what we got here. So then I said, engagement is nice. Accuracy is better. This is particularly important when evaluating proper use of force by government. Is that all my? Yeah, that's all. Okay. Oh, I see what happened. Okay. So there was more to the conversation, but that's the point that I want to make here, is that a lot of people are analyzing this through the lens of, do I like this person? Is this person on my team? That's where they're starting from. That's a huge problem for me. I absolutely oppose it. I want if you're going to present to me an argument and you say this was a justified shooting, what I want to see is an argument that would have worked similarly, not 100%, it's a different situation, but similar to Ashley Babbitt. In other words, who Ashley Babbitt was would equally be as irrelevant as who Renee Good was. Now, all of that being said, it is true that Renee was... Oh, you know what? Let me turn this off. Let the music go. All that being said, it is true that Renee was interfering. This is an objective fact because, at a minimum, she was obstructing traffic. So let me show you this image here real quick. Because, again, I did a bunch of research. So here is this is pretty much the exact location, Portland Avenue, okay, that she was shot. And as you can see, this is the whole street. So on the bottom of the screen, you can see a white line. After that white line is where cars park. That is basically like the curb area. So then you have 2 lanes of traffic. Then you have a bike lane on the top of the screen. And then you have more distance or more area for people to park. Okay. So then let's take a look at, let's see here. Let's get this going. So here's Google Maps. Let's put this up on the screen. All right, so here's Google Maps, and we know this is the exact location because if you zoom in on this weird dinosaur thing over here, that's in some of the videos, okay? So you'll notice right here, we have 2 lanes for the same direction of traffic. And you can see this. I can't get close to the cars because obviously this is Google Maps, saying Google Maps was done by a vehicle. So as the vehicle goes forward, the vehicles in front of it will go forward. So I'm unable to get up close and show you exactly. But I think your understanding of how our streets work should tell you this is a one-way street. And so she was, in fact, and we'll see it in a minute when we look at the video, she was, in fact, blocking traffic. In fact, I'll use this little mouse here. So she was, you'll see in the video some of the white lines and some of the angles. The angled white lines. So she was actually, her rear wheels were right about this line right here. Okay. And so then you can see her vehicle is poking out. And then you'll also be able to see the dashed white lines in the center when the officers pull up. So you'll be able to see all of that. So she was obstructing at least 1 lane of traffic. So yeah, she was engaging in illegal actions. I will acknowledge that. But obstructing traffic is not an excuse for lethal force. And as we also will see, she does refuse to get out of the car when agents demand it. Now, I have been very clear on this. Just because somebody I don't believe in the, hey, just follow orders. I mean, not in the sense that people present it. I believe, generally speaking, it's a good idea if you follow orders because that is likely to keep you alive, but it's not a guarantee. It's just generally good advice. I tell people, if an officer has ordered you to do something, unless it's an outright illegal thing, right? Like if they say, hey, get out of the way of traffic, you should probably get out of the way of traffic. Because what comes next is force, because they're there to enforce the law. They may do it incorrectly, but you are at a disadvantage because on the street, they will have things that you don't have. They have guns. You may or may not have one. They have backup. You likely don't have backup. They also have the fact that they have been appointed to manage the streets. So if you get into an altercation, the bar for you to say, I was in the right, goes up when you get to court. So from my perspective, it is just generally a good idea. Now I hear conflicting reports about whether ICE agents have authority over U.S. citizens. Here is my understanding. For regular crimes, my understanding is that they do not. But if it's related to immigration, then they have some flexibility. So I want you to think about that. How many times have we joked about an officer will pull somebody over and say, I smelled weed, that's why I searched his vehicle. That's why I arrested him, right? The infamous, I smelled weed or I smelled alcohol, right? So keep in mind that even though my understanding says ICE agents have a limited amount of authority only related to immigration for U.S. citizens, that doesn't mean that they can't make up a reason to detain you. So this is why I oppose necessarily, not doing what they say. Now, what I believe they can do is if you're impeding their work, like you're blocking traffic and they're trying to go or something, then they can detain you and then hand you over to regular police. Okay, so I'm just telling you what I believe they can do. That's all I'm saying. In any case, it is generally advisable to comply with commands. Better to fight in court than on the street. But again, I'm drawing a clear line and saying, just because you're not obeying commands doesn't necessarily mean they can use lethal force. So that only leaves the matter of whether or not driving her vehicle forward to have was or was not putting the life of Agent Ross under threat. That's it. So my argument here is, my argument with Renee is, yes, she was in violation of the law. Yes, I think that's provably true. She was obstructing traffic. She did not listen to the commands that she was given. It's questionable whether those particular commands were lawful or not. Okay? But it's generally not advisable to disobey those commands because they are going to escalate. And they did. They got out of the vehicle. We'll see it in a second. And they said, get out of the car. She didn't get out of the car. They go and they grab her door handle, likely to open the door and force her out. Okay. And then presumably detain her, hand her over to police, and then, maybe tow her vehicle, whatever. Right. That's the presumption. Okay. So my point here in making all of this is just to say, yes, she was in disobedience of the law, but that doesn't warrant shooting her. The only thing that we have to worry about is, okay, was she a threat to Agent Ross? That is it. And so that leads me to the next part, which we'll get to in just a moment after intermission. But first, let's check out some comments. And by the way, I cannot put the comments on the screen still, so we will have to, let's see, let's see. Yeah, we'll just leave it like this. I was going to change the focus here, but now we're going to. All right, so let me get to some comments here. I don't have any comment music right now because things are in disarray. I told you last week that a piece of my equipment failed, so I've kind of got to adjust a little bit. Anyway, all right, let's see what we got here. How much training does do ICE agents even get? That Liberty Lady asked. I've seen some things that suggest that it's actually very limited. I don't know. So I don't know how much training they get, nor do I know if the training actually prepares them for the field work that they will actually do. Meaning, like when they go out, are they trained to only apprehend somebody who's in violation of our immigration laws, or are they trained also to deal with an unruly public that may be kind of getting in their way, standing there yelling at them, videotaping them, blowing their whistles, maybe blocking traffic, whatever? Are they trained for any of that? I don't know. In my opinion, they should be. Especially Like, I will say this. The Trump administration kind of ramped up our immigration enforcement, sent ICE out all over the place. They're now wearing their mask and all this stuff. When the moment they did that, somebody should have said, by the way, let's make sure these guys are properly trained so they don't create a catastrophe. Somebody should have said that. Somebody should have said, hey, we're doing something out of the ordinary. We're going to be met with some resistance, whether it's Antifa or just regular, who knows, butch lesbian women that should be in a coffee shop reading a book, right? Doesn't matter, right? They're going to face some interference. Let's make sure that they're trained for it so that we don't come under fire for doing our job. Because the last thing that they should want is any American citizen being shot, or anyone for that matter. Let's see. What else here? Joe says, narrator, ICE agent wasn't doing his job. So this is where it gets interesting, right? Like, were they arresting somebody that was here illegally at that moment? No, they were not. Can they make the legal argument that they were unable to do that because of all these protesters and maybe specifically Renee? Maybe. And I say maybe again in the same way that an officer can go, I smelled alcohol. That's why I did these things, So you have a level of subjectivity that just kind of goes in their favor. I don't like it. I would rather, require officers, at least in most instances, to have concrete evidence, for their actions. But there's also some problems with that too. So was he doing his job? Depends on who you talk to, I guess. Let's see. That Liberty Lady points out, force officers to have a liability insurance, then watch qualified immunity cases go down. Yes, I agree. I think there are much better ways to address qualified immunity rather than there are much ways to address the concerns that qualified immunity helps resolve, as opposed to, I'm saying this all confusing like today. Goodness gracious. Yes. I think there are better solutions than qualified immunity. We'll say that, since I can't seem to talk today. Let's see. Let's see. Taconite says, paid pamper peelers protesting LMFAO, Tampon Timmy's friends. I mean, it's nice alliteration. I'm not really sure what you're saying there. But then you follow up with self-defense plain as day. Actually, no, we're not. And I'm going to show you why it's actually not self-defense plain as day. And then when I show you that, that will go toward my argument that Renee was not intending to run him over. Okay? So let's see what else we got in here. Joe says, DL over here thinking people dealing with ICE have rights. I know, right? Like, what kind of craziness is that? You have rights? Let's see. Yeah. That Liberty Lady says, looks like DL's hand slap on X didn't affect the live stream there. No, it didn't. It was resolved by then. So yesterday, I responded to somebody on social media regarding this case, and I thought they were being foolish. And I said, slap yourself for being stupid. And within like less than a minute, X was like, you're in trouble. You're going to get time out. You also need to delete this post. And so I had to delete the post. Then it put me in a 12-hour timeout. This was like at like 6:30 or something like that. And so initially I was like, oh, crap, I'm not going to be able to live stream to X tomorrow. But then I realized, okay, 12 hours. Yeah, I'll still have time. So I'm here. It happened. Be mindful of what you say on social media. It was my New Year's resolution to stop insulting people online. So clearly my failure to adhere to my own New Year resolution, that kind of bit me. Anyway, let's see. Oh no, ICE afraid of 1A and someone leaving, right? But we'll get back to that. Let's go to an intermission here real quick, and then we will come back and we will show why no, it's not self-defense plain as day. Be right back.
What's up, Solutionaries? Maj 2 right here, founder of Black Guns Matter and the Solutionary Center. We offer basic firearms classes, conflict resolution, and a whole host of other skill sets that are beneficial to our communities all around America. We're able to do these classes because of your voluntary donations. We don't accept government funds. The people that choose to pay it forward to remove the financial barrier to entry are choosing to do so voluntarily. So you can support at givesendgo.com/solutionary. Give it whatever level you can afford to do. Repost the content. Let folks know that we have a community to save and we have to do it ourselves together. givesendgo.com/solutionary. Be safe, be solutionary.
All right, we're back. Let's get into this. Agent Ross. When the first video came out, I argued that it seemed like Agent Ross walked in front of a vehicle. But in the first video, which appears to be from the sidewalk and to the left of Renee's vehicle, it isn't clear because the agent who parks and walks up to her door to try to open it, he obstructs our view of Agent Ross. So it's not clear exactly what happened. Then video came out from down the street on the same side of the street, and that appears to show Agent Ross being hit, but it's at a distance, so it's very unclear. When you zoom in, it gets very grainy. But it really does look like it. And I think what some people online did was they sped it up and then put it out there, and then the sped up version actually makes it look like he got hit. It makes it look even more so like he got hit. So then Friday, I pulled up Tim Pool's video, which I was not able to play, and he makes a convincing argument that Agent Ross is pushed by the vehicle instead of jumping out of the way. So I want to play a portion of that clip because we're going to dispute it, and let me know in the comments if for some reason it doesn't play. You don't hear the audio, but we should have all the audio resolved from last week. So let's go and we will play that video. Let's see here. Let's see. Is it? Yeah. So we're going to play this video. Give me a second.
I'm going to show you the slowed down footage that I believe proves this woman was intending to kill that ICE agent. Watch the officer who has his gun drawn. Look at his feet right here in the back left.
Okay, so let me pause this here. This was the original video that we saw. And as you can see, the agent that is trying to open her door is obstructing our view of Agent Ross. So we don't get a clear view of what he's doing. We can't see how close he is to the vehicle. We can't even see if it looks like he's walking. Like he just kind of shows up in the frame and there he is. And so all we get are we can see his legs and his feet, to the side of and in between this other agent's legs and feet. So just pointing out where Agent Ross is. You can't see him at this point except for this tiny little bit of his leg sticking off to the left there.
Let me make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. As I pull this forward, notice his feet both slide backwards. You see his foot sliding? Yeah, he's not taking a step. He's being hit by the vehicle.
Okay. This is a good point, actually, that he's being pushed or hit or something. In other words, it is not Agent Ross who is choosing to move. Now, this sounds like it doesn't fit my point, but we're going to get there. Don't worry.
Now I can already hear you saying, hold on, Tim. If you're up against a vehicle and it accelerates and it pushes you out of the way, that doesn't warrant shooting somebody. Agreed. Let's go back to the lie. Here's the officer. Here's the vehicle reversing. The officer is not in front of the vehicle. She reverses.
Okay. So this is where everybody's making this argument. Oh, she reverses and she positions the vehicle in front of him.
And now he is in front of the vehicle. He initially is to the right of the vehicle. By all means argue he should not have placed himself in this position. We're talking about seconds. Now watch this. The vehicle stops here. The wheels are pointed left. As you can see, the officer is standing right in front of the vehicle. Now watch this. Right there. You see the front tire? Watch the front tire right here. The wheels are pointed left and she accelerates. The wheel spins out on ice. Then, with the wheels pointed at the officer, having spun out already, meaning the officer can hear the engine rev with it pointed at him, he draws his weapon. And in a second, because this is slow mode, she then begins to turn right, hitting him, and he shoots.
Okay. So let's pause this here. It's the end of the clip that I wanted to show you. A couple of things here. Yes, the officer is in front of her. And from this angle, it does appear like she backs up and she's now facing Agent Ross and then goes forward. Here's the problem. There's a couple of problems here. Number one, let's talk about this spinning on ice. Renee appears to be she appears to be driving an older Honda Pilot. It's definitely a Honda Pilot, but it appears to be an older model. From what I could find, that's a front-wheel drive vehicle. A little research later, and Tim may be unintentionally overstating how hard Renee hits the accelerator pedal. This goes toward this idea in the court of public opinion, whether or not, what her intention was. So, according to research, when her left front tire slips, the vehicle will divert all energy to that wheel. But most importantly, it only requires that it slips a little, and it doesn't need her to necessarily slam down on the pedal. Now, we can argue about this, but let's just try to be fair, because I don't think this really harms my point. If I'm in front of a vehicle and I hear the engine rev up even a little bit, right? Just even a little bit, because it's a threat, a vehicle in front of me, I'll likely interpret the sound to be no different than if somebody slams on the gas. Like, Tim's right. There's a split second here to make a decision. And so if I'm in front of a vehicle, I'm trying to think this, kind of do a little thought experiment. You're in front of a vehicle. You hear it rev up even just a little bit. You're in front of it. You're like, oh crap, they're coming toward me. And in that moment, you're not going to be like, oh, it's only revving up a little bit or it's revving up a lot. You don't really know. You just know car moving forward, engine revving up loud, get out of the way. That's what people will do. Get out of the way. But what's interesting is what Tim points out, and I don't think he realizes, he takes time to draw his weapon. He doesn't keep moving. He doesn't get out of the way first. He takes time to draw his weapon. So a lot of people will say, well, he has no duty to retreat. I mean, okay. Are you arguing that it's a wise idea to stand in front of a car that you think is now a threat to you and spend the time drawing your firearm so that you can hopefully use that to dissuade them or shoot them or whatever you think it's going to do? Is that wise? Is that when people say you don't have a duty to retreat, are you telling me that your advice is to stay in front of a car that you believe is about to hit you? Because I would say you may not have a duty to retreat, but wisdom would tell you to do that. That's what you should do. Get the hell out of the way. Live to argue that point later, which he does, by the way. And that's kind of interesting that Agent Ross lives and remains standing in order to have this argument. But this all leads us to this next video. Now, this next video came out by CNN. Okay? And actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's before we get to the CNN video, I just want to reiterate some of the things I've already pointed out. So let's watch this video. So let me transition over here. Then what you're going to see is I overlay. I did like a picture-in-picture. I overlay. This is Agent Ross's video that you see on the screen. And this is him getting out of the car, and he initially does a walk around. Okay? And he walks around once, and then after he walks around, that's when this interaction that we're all arguing about plays out. So in a few moments here, you're going to see the original video, the one that Tim Pool was using, the one that most everybody has already seen. You're going to see that one pick up as well. So give it just a second, and it'll make more sense here in just a moment. So here he is. He's getting out of his vehicle. Okay. He's walking up. He's recording from his phone. in his right hand. Okay? So we see it's a Honda. Okay? He's videotaping.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad.
So she says, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Doesn't sound like somebody that's really looking forward to running over an ICE agent.
What? Show your face. I'm not
Okay.
mad. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later.
That's Renee's wife. Okay, that's recording. So now this is where the first video that came out, that's where this one picks up. Now, what I did so that you guys, like, I can't prove to you that I synced them up 100% accurately. So what I did was I left the audio in for both of them so that when you hear the audio of, like, say, the officers saying, "Get out of the car," you don't hear like an echo or any weird sound where it's not synced. So I think that kind of proves that I synced it up correctly. But I want to continue watching. Just watch what happens.
That's fine. U.S. citizen.
So there we go. Right? We've got Agent Ross's video with the wife, talking trash. I'm a U.S. citizen. I can do what I want, kind of a thing, whatever. Right? We see that initially here. This is where Renee actually waves somebody on. Okay. And notice in the video there where her rear tire is. Her rear tire is right at that line. That's the line. So like her tire is actually in that little space that kind of says this is the start of the bike path. Okay, so that's where she is, and she's kind of angled perpendicular. All right. Now we got the ICE agents come up, and then you can see the dashed white line underneath their vehicle, or maybe on the other side of their vehicle. Remember the picture that I showed of the street? So
You
we
want
can
to
see
come at
this.
us? I said go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
Okay, so now she's taunting him. He's, I would say, about 5 feet from her vehicle, from Renee's vehicle. All right, so this is where the agents get out. Now they're going to approach Renee. So let's watch.
Go ahead.
Get out of the fucking car.
All right, so he says to get out of the car. You can see that Renee now is starting to back up. And you can also see the wife tries to get into the vehicle, but I would assume the automatic door lock's clicked in, so she can't open the door to hop in herself. Okay, probably good for her, but whatever. All right, so let's back this up just a wee bit here because I want to show you something. Let's go.
I said go
All right.
get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Right here. All right, so right here in Agent Ross's video, I want you to see the white lines. You see how far they are from where his camera is? All right, I want you to keep that in mind as we watch.
Get out of the fucking car.
Now, notice now that he's gotten closer and more in front of those white lines. So he is walking. He is walking. And then about here is where you see her vehicle backing up. And he is continuing to move. Because notice the angle and notice the white lines in his from his point of view, how they keep moving, like he keeps moving in front of him, and the lines, they're not moving, but they appear to be moving to his left. That is not Renee moving. That is him moving. Him and Renee are moving at the same time. So then,
Get out of the car.
now he's in front of her. And so now he's to the right of where he initially wasn't. Again, let's go back and look at that.
I
Okay.
said go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
So
Go ahead.
he is to the left and right alongside the white line at this point.
Get out of
And
the
as we go, we see now he's to the front of it and moving closer.
Get out of the car.
And at some point, he seems to stop. That's going to be the most interesting point. We continue. And he says, "Whoa." All right. Let's back up a wee bit here. Right. This is where we can see that it's not clear whether he was continuing to walk, whether he stops, what. Okay. This is where a lot of people have been arguing. They're like, wow, it looks like he was in front of the car and she ran in right into him. But then I would argue, if you look back over to the left side now, if you look and you watch the trajectory of the vehicle. You notice how she continues going right. She was close enough. I mean, look how close it is in his own shot. He is like almost within arm's distance of the vehicle. If Renee intended to hit the officer, she would have. I don't think you could argue just from this video that if she intended to hit him, she absolutely would have. He was within arm's reach. You can't. That's the equivalent of holding a gun up 2 feet from a person and missing. You would have to miss on purpose. All right. So then it continues. All right. So then it's like, okay, was he hit? Was he not? I think that what actually happened was he got pushed because he had his camera in his hand and he had his gun in his other hand, and he used one hand, presumably the camera, to make contact with the car. And that's what Tim Pool was describing as, look, his feet are sliding him back, and he basically gets slid back. I don't have proof of that. It's very hard to tell. That's somewhat speculative. So now let's take a look at this video from CNN, because the video from CNN is going to be the most interesting one. So let's take a look here.
As the vehicle
All right, so they are narrating. Here's what I want you to look at. So they point an arrow in
passes,
here.
you can
There's that arrow. The arrow points out where Renee's car is. So this is from a neighbor's house across the street. Okay, we can see that her car is where the arrow is. We can see Agent Ross's vehicle is the white SUV that's to the left of that. And what I really want you to focus on is there appears to be a tree right there just to the left of her passenger side light. Okay, there seems to be like a tree or just something. It looks like a tree to me. So I want you to keep that in mind, okay, as we watch this.
see the dark colored
All right. So now we can see the two people that are in between Renee's car and the white SUV. That's Agent Ross, and that is the wife. Agent Ross is on the left. I can't like use my mouse to show it to you on the screen, but Agent Ross is to the left, and then the wife is to the right of those two people that are standing. We continue watching.
SUV driven by Renee Nicole Good. That's on.
Okay, he goes back to the car, which matches up with what we saw. So now he's several feet away from the vehicle. Okay? He is in no danger right now if she were to pull out at this very moment. None. So then,
Right there in the back, the surveillance video taken by a
now you can see to the right, you can see the other agents walking up. This is where they would be saying, hey, get out of the car, get the F out of the car.
home nearby. Agents
All right, there we go. We see Agent Ross. Now he's walking toward the vehicle, and we saw that in his video. The question is, does at one point she orient the vehicle to be in front of him, or is this a simultaneous action? So I want you to watch very carefully.
can be seen milling about near the
All right.
vehicle, then converging on it. And
All right, so that all happened quickly. CNN did a nice thing.
then you
They
see right
slow it
there
down
the
just a
SUV
second.
begins to move, and that's when the shots are fired.
All right, so now it's in slow-mo, okay? Slow-mo. You can see right there, the agent, back it up just a wee bit. He's walking toward Renee's vehicle. He walks toward, okay? Now he is where he looks like he's to the left of this tree. And we can see that Renee is backing up. All right, now watch this. He continues walking. He walks now to the point where he's to the right of this tree. So he has walked the distance from his car to a position where, from a distance, he is now to the right of this fixed object. Because when you've got multiple things moving, the only thing that you can do to identify who is moving where is to find a stationary object and use that as a reference. And so I am using this tree that is in the way. It's a bit blurry, but you can see it. And you can see now he is to the right of that. And then he does something interesting. He just stops. He just stops. This is where he's pulling out his firearm. So let me ask you, because I think I saw somebody in the comments here, usual suspect, deranged, lesbian, bi-an. I don't even know what that means. Okay. We got somebody in the comments, Taconite. I'm sure you have nothing better to do than to come in here and give goofy commentary, but that's fine. Whatever. I'll take it. Okay. So what we see here is that the officer walked over and was continuing to walk as if he was going to be back in front of her vehicle. At the same time, she reverses. Then he stops. Now, I want to point out, in the other videos that we saw, she initially moves forward, right? When the ICE agents pull up, she moves forward, she stops, she waves one person on, then she backs up. Then the ICE agents pull up again. Then Agent Ross walks around her, and she reverses a little bit as he's walking around her front the first time. And then he walks around. He goes back to his door. The other ICE agents, about this time, now they're getting up close. They're trying to demand that she get out of the vehicle. And then Agent Ross now continues to walk again in front of her vehicle. So his situational awareness should have told him this vehicle is not in park. We see from multiple angles that it has moved multiple times, forward and backward. Even while Agent Ross is circling the vehicle, it has moved. And she appears to make no attempt on that first pass to harm him in any way. In fact, she foolishly smiles and she's all like, blah, 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 it's okay, yada, yada. I'm not mad at you, whatever, do what you got to do, right? That's not illegal. Stupid, yes. Illegal, no. So my argument, and let's see here, Pamela Splain says, are you trying to make it look like the officer's fault? He was distracted with the deranged wifey and didn't see Renee as a threat until she accelerates at hitting him and he shoots. He walked in front of a vehicle that he knew was not in park and that he could see his own video shows has moved multiple times. If you're an ICE agent or a law enforcement officer anywhere and you come to a scene that has already started to escalate, and then you walk around a vehicle and that vehicle starts moving, repositioning itself, that should tell you this vehicle is not in park. It is a danger. Everybody that's arguing and saying, oh, she used it as a deadly weapon. Okay. At what point are you going to admit that the officer should have recognized this could be a deadly weapon? Only at the moment that she decides to drive away, that's the moment that he decides, you know what? Perhaps I shouldn't stand in front of this. Only at the moment where he draws his firearm out, where he stands still in front of her vehicle rather than continuing to get the hell out of the way. He could have easily continued walking and he would not have gotten hit. How can I make that a claim? Because he stopped and he still barely got hit. So what would have happened if he just continued walking and got the hell out of the front of the vehicle? Am I saying it's his fault? I'm saying he's negligent. Did he do it on purpose? Because that's kind of what fault means. No. I mean, fault has a dual meaning. It can mean on purpose. It can mean by accident. So I'm using the word negligent here to kind of distinguish. I think he was negligent in his situational awareness. The first one, you could argue and say, no big deal. He walked around a vehicle. Everything seemed calm, cool, and collective. But the moment he started seeing a vehicle move back and forth, he should have said, I am no longer going to position myself in front of it. Or when he continues to walk in front of it, he should have not stopped. Now, here's the real point that I want to make. Here in Florida, we have a law that says, hey, if you need to flee, like a riot or a protest that's gotten unruly and people are coming at your car and you flee and you run somebody over, our law actually protects you because of that. And that's because if you're in a vehicle, even though you have a weapon, people outside of around you, they could have weapons as well, and you could still be in danger. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should be running police over. What I am saying is that when this law was passed, a lot of people on the right were like, yeah, because those protesters shouldn't be in the road. They should get out of the way. They shouldn't be in front of a car that's trying to go somewhere. They had all these arguments, the same ones that say, FAFO, don't stand in front of cars. That was their argument. So why is that argument not applicable to a police officer? Why would we tell a police officer, yeah, the citizens, they got to get out of the way of a moving vehicle, but go ahead. Are you trying to get officers killed? Is that what you're telling me? That you want officers to get hit by a dumb citizen or by a citizen who intends to harm them? Why aren't you arguing that, hey man, like let's say that I'm a bootlicker like many of you. Okay? Let's say I would say, hey, Officer Jones, get out of the way. I like that you're an officer. I like that you go get the bad guy. I like that you're doing all these things. And yeah, I'll even support you when you do things that you shouldn't. Okay, then your argument should be get out of the way so you can keep doing those things. Why are you trying to get officers killed? Do you not care about them? So no, I don't. I think he was negligent. I think this demonstrates, I think there is plenty of evidence to demonstrate that Renee had no intention of running him over. That doesn't mean that she herself wasn't negligent in making contact. Because I agreed a long time ago, from the very beginning, this story broke, I said, do not flee. Bad idea, right? Don't flee a scene like that. Because as Chris Rock has said, if the police have to come chasing you, they're bringing an ass whipping with them. And that's how if police come after you, they're coming with force. And you can't guarantee it's the least amount of force. In as much as we may want it, you have no guarantee of that. So don't flee. But since we're talking about the court of public opinion, I think it's important for us to have our facts and say, what are the facts? Well, what does the evidence say? The evidence suggests that she had no intention of hitting him. Why? Because when he walks around the first time, she backs up. When he passes by her, she's gloating in his face and she's like, I'm not mad at you. Go ahead. She's sounding like she's very okay with him being there. Okay? When he walks by the wife's like, yeah, we're U.S. citizens. Go ahead. Record me. Record the license plate. They were very comfortable with being recorded, even their license plate. Does that sound like somebody that is planning to run somebody over or that even has that on the table? I did actually see some people, they were like, here's my thought. My thought was this all was planned and she died intentionally. Like, are you crazy? Are you insane? No, that is a dumb theory. I think the most likely theory here, if we're going from Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is most likely the correct one. I think that answer is the officer failed in his situational awareness, put himself in danger, she fled the scene, and those two things combined are why he made contact or why the vehicle made contact with him. But she ultimately was not intending to run him over because she was simply way too close to have missed him if that was her intention. Because remember, intention means you are trying to do something. I will run and hit you. And if you're in front of me such that I can see your eyes, I don't even have to look to the right or to the left to see you. I can look you dead in the eyes, straight on. You are right in front of my vehicle. And if my intention is this person is 2 feet away from me or however many few feet, and I want to hit you, I've got the advantage tremendously. You are at a disadvantage if I'm trying to hit you. But as we also saw in the video, including his own video, she turns the wheel to the right, her steering wheel. So she backs up when he makes his first pass. Let's back up a little bit. She initially tries to pull out, and then she waves it on past. Then the ICE agent pulls up, and then she tells the ICE agent, which I mentioned Friday, she tells the ICE agents that pull up, she said, hey, I'm trying to pull out. I'm pulling out. Now it's interesting because her wheels were turned left. So was she pulling out to be more of a nuisance? Probably. I'll agree to that completely. And she may have been pulling out to obstruct traffic more, and because her wheels were turned to the left, and the way that she was facing and the way that the cars are going, it's a one-way street, so she should have been pulling out right to begin with, but she wasn't. She was pulling out left, so I think she was probably going to pull out and obstruct traffic more. Okay, fine. If you want to argue that she could be arrested for that, fine. Obstructing traffic is a crime for which you can be arrested for. If I go out right now to a major road and I just park in front of it, no ICE agents, the police will come and they will arrest me. Okay? That's what will happen. So I'm not disputing that. I am not disputing that she was being a nuisance. Okay? But I am telling you that she seemed to have some other objective there, not one where she was like, I'm here to harm somebody. Just I'm here to get in the way. But getting in the way is not a capital punishment. It's not a capital crime. So then she tries to go forward. Then the ICE agents pull up. They get out. They demand she gets out of the car. By this time, Agent Ross, he's back over to her passenger side over by his vehicle. So he's feet away. We saw that in the video. We saw it in his video. We saw it in the CNN video from a distance. We see that he's 5, 6, 7, 8 feet away. Then he continues to walk forward at the same time that she's reversing. Okay, she's reversing, and I showed you this. She is reversing as he is walking in front of her vehicle. That was a poor decision. If somebody is not getting, if you hear your coworker say, get out of the car, and somebody backs up, you probably shouldn't get in front of their vehicle. That in itself should be where all the right are saying, all the people on the right are saying, well, FAFO, he happened to win in that exchange, but he could have easily gotten run over because he was effing around by walking in front of a moving vehicle. So he walks in front of a moving vehicle, and then not only does he doesn't continue walking, he stops long enough to draw his firearm out. I think he was negligent. Yes. I think she was stupid. Yes. That I think this is going to be my final position until such time that maybe some court records come out and we can read, what the attorneys have dug up. But I'm not sure that it matters. I think we have a sufficient amount of video that we can look at and we can make a simple, very easy to understand argument. Both of them were wrong. But as I've said before, I expect officers to be trained, to be situationally aware, and they are responsible for their decisions. I would argue that the two agents that walk up and they say, get out of the car, get the F out of the car, they've escalated the situation. Right? Now, is it their fault she tried to run? No. But is it their fault the situation escalated? Yes. Right? She still bears responsibility for trying to flee. And again, I said she should not have tried to flee from the very beginning. From the beginning, I said, don't do that. Do not flee an officer. That almost never turns out well. Probably so much almost never that you can just say, absolutely, it never turns out well. Like, police aren't going to be like, oh, well, they weren't doing anything anyway. Like, that just doesn't happen. They come after you. And this is already a tense situation. People are divided when it comes to immigration right now. People are divided on ICE's actions. Everybody should have walked into this knowing this was a very serious situation. I think Renee and her wife should have been more mindful and said, hey, we're going to a protest where ICE agents are trying to do some work. It could get hot. Are we prepared for that? And for that, when I say that, what I mean is the worst case scenario, which is you get shot by an ICE agent. That's basically the worst case scenario. You might be able to argue and say, well, a worst case scenario, one even worse than that would be that the ICE agents don't shoot you, but you end up harming somebody. Maybe even a citizen, a fellow citizen that's there, a fellow protester. So yeah, if you want to argue she shouldn't have been there, that's fine. But her legal rights still exist. If you want to argue that she did some things that may warrant being arrested, totally with you. I'm okay with that. I draw the line when you say she intended to hit him. I say, no, I don't think the evidence is there. I also draw the line when I say, I think Agent Ross is negligent for the 3 rounds that he fired. He fired 1 round up front, right when he was basically in front of her, and then the other 2 as she was passing. Now, some people have made the argument and they said, hey, once you fire 1 time, the next 2 come out so much easier. Okay, fine. But you're still responsible for them. And since I'm looking at this from the perspective of saying you shouldn't have been standing where you were in the first place, I'm holding you accountable for all 3 shots. The first one, second one, and the third one. And I think that one of the latter 2 were the kill shots. because if you, and I think I showed it to you Friday, but you can go and look it up. There is a picture of the SUV with a bullet hole in the lower right-hand corner of the dash. I don't think that was the kill shot because it would have had to go through the window and through the dash and then enter into her. Now, it's possible it could have ricocheted at some point and perhaps hit her, but I think the kill shot was because it was a headshot, was more than likely the shot that was fired as she was driving by, and he points it into the window. Yes, he is negligent. Yes, he should be stripped of his qualified immunity. Yes, he should be on trial, and yes, he should be convicted. Of what exactly? The lawyers can figure that one out. Will it happen? Probably not, because he is a federal agent. As I pointed out, he has qualified immunity. The likelihood is he's going to be covered. What does that mean? Well, you shouldn't be rioting, but you should be demanding some changes in the law. You should be demanding some changes in policy at a bare minimum. All right, folks, that's what I got. Let me see. Let's say it looks like some conversation between you guys in there. He got a potty mouth, unprofessional and scary from a guy with a gun. You know, of all the things to criticize the officer for, saying effing B, I'm gonna let that one go. Like, if I feel like I gotta shoot you because you drove your vehicle toward me, like, even if I'm wrong, even if I'm negligent, if I think that you were trying to hit me in the moment, I'm probably gonna say some nasty things to you as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was I don't remember where it was, a little tangent here. There was, I think it was a homeless guy, it was a white guy, stabbed by a black homeless guy. And I believe this was in the United States. And he called the black guy the N-word after being stabbed. And he ended up, the black guy ended up being let go, in part because of the N-word. I think that's crazy. And at the time I was like, if you stab me, like, you've just accepted whatever I have to say about you at that point, and it's not going to be pretty. I don't know what I'm going to say to you, but I'm going to be swearing up and down. So I let that one slide. I don't think that's material to my argument, you know, and I know that I would probably say some pretty nasty things in a conflict to somebody. So, you know, I'm going to let that one slide. I'm good with that one. Would it be better if he didn't? Yeah, but whatever. All right, folks. That's my show for today. I hope you found it informative. Nothing to be inspired about other than to reach out to your politicians and say, we demand a change in the law. We demand that officers can be held accountable when they engage in negligent actions that result in somebody's death. Had he just fired at the car and she drove off and then was later captured and arrested, fine. Qualified immunity wouldn't be such a big deal in that case. But it is a huge deal. I still oppose it. But it is a huge deal when we're talking about somebody's life being taken, right? At the end of the day, I want officers to only shoot people when they absolutely have no other choice. And I want them to be situationally aware and be mindful of their surroundings so that they do not put themselves in a position where they feel they need to shoot and kill citizens or even immigrants for that matter. Well, did I miss anything, folks? Do I need to offer a correction? Maybe you want to offer me a little bit of praise. Whatever the case, I'm all ears. Come back later, drop me a comment in, let me know, give me your thoughts. I do read all of the comments, and it helps out with the algorithm. But with that being said, I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. I will be out. Have a good one. Stay safe. Guard your liberty. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, you know, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.